Demon Child, an Order of Rain short story by James Byron Clark. Chapter 1. Nerd. Mike scrolled the cursor on the computer screen towards the date and time. It reported January 15th, 1992, 3:45 p.m. He stood up and stretched for a moment, then picked up his mug and made his way across the room towards the water fountain. The past year changed Mike's life. Mike had always been an introvert, preferring solitude to the company of people. Although he was an excellent student, his quiet demeanor usually alienated him from classmates, teachers, and eventually with co-workers. Throughout all the rough shoulder bumps, the jeers, and the verbal abuses, Mike had continually remained silent. He simply waited for his tormentors to eventually move on and ignore him. His life had been one of continued silence, of deep emotions kept in check by some vague yet constant fear. Kelly was the only person who had ever looked at Mike differently. Kelly and her family moved into the neighborhood on his first year of high school. Mike first saw her as he walked home late from school one evening. A slim girl, her jeans exhibited the first sign of womanly curves. She stood beneath a tree, looking helplessly up at a scared cat clinging precariously to a branch. Without looking at her, Mike put down his pack and climbed the tree. Reaching the terrified cat, he endured the desperate scratches of the creature as he held it in his arm and climbed down. That's when she first smiled at him, that captivating, warm smile. They became close, although Mike stayed away from Kelly at school. He had worried that she might get picked on just by being seen with him, the social outcast. She eventually became a cheerleader, socially poised at the apex of high school's social hierarchy, and yet she always treated Mike like a normal guy, like a human being, like a friend. Often, when Kelly's cheering practices ran late, she would find Mike at the school's computer department. Somehow, she was always able to convince Mike to leave his voluminous computer code and data and walk her home. Mike relished those walks. Computers were his life, his only friends. Computers made no judgments about him. They understood him, just as he understood them. Computers were his comfort, never judgmental, never cruel. Yet he always looked forward to the knock on the classroom door that would take him away from the company of the computer screens and deliver him to Kelly's presence. Computers were his life, but being with Kelly made him feel alive. And she agreed to share her life with me, Mike thought. The thought involuntarily made Mike smile. He never approached Kelly about his love for her before that fateful day. He had assumed that Kelly would always look at him as the platonic friend, the guy whose shoulder she could cry on. Yet a year after her skiing accident, they had grown closer than ever, sharing more and more, until finally the woman of his dreams, agreed to marry him. It'll be a small wedding, Kelly made sure of that. She wanted to avoid embarrassing Mike, who had very few friends and came from a small family. I hope she doesn't pick some of her more judgmental friends to come. Hey, Johnson! Mike's thoughts interrupted. He looked up and saw the usual water fountain gang. Todd was a towering hulk of a man, and surrounding him were his cohorts, Bill and Ross. He ignored the group as he bent to fill his mug with hot water. 3 football team washouts, Mike thought. Heard you were getting married. What, no invitations for your co-workers? Todd said amidst the chuckles of his minions. Just walk away, Mike, he thought. They'll give up, just like they always do, and eventually ignore you. Mike started to turn away, but Todd's beefy hand grasped the back of his neck. Look, nerd, my cousin Debbie was on the cheerleading team with the hag you're marrying, and she's pretty pissed off because your lady friend didn't invite her, and she invited all the who's who. Guess your future wifey didn't want Debbie telling everybody at the wedding how much of a loser you are. Debbie thinks this Kelly chick is marrying way beneath her status, and I agree. Nobody's lower than you, Shrimpo, so why don't you be a nice nerd and invite my cuz to your wedding? Ross and Bill's laughter echoed down the hall, giving the impression to distant co-workers that the group, including Mike, was simply having a friendly chat. Mike was shaking. "Scared, nerd?" Todd said as he tightened his grip. "You should be. I can make your life a living hell. You may be the ace programmer, but I control HR. You might find your file filled with nasty things if you don't give me what I want." Scared, Mike thought. Yes, I am. I'm scared. I might kill you. Please just stop. Please just let me go. "Why don't you invite me, too?" Todd said. "Maybe I could give that whore of yours a last taste of a true man." Something exploded in Mike's mind. His right hand lashed out, spraying hot water at Ross. With a practiced swiftness, he swung the mug in the opposite direction, backhanding the mug into Bill's face and smashing it to pieces. His left arm swung back, breaking Todd's nose with his elbow with a resounding crack. As Todd's meaty grip loosened in shock and pain, Mike turned. He grabbed the hand that had gripped his neck and broke the 4 and ring fingers as he twisted the hand, forcing Todd to his knees. Not so tough now, huh? Mike thought. Todd was crying with pain as his cohorts fled the scene, blood and water dripping from their clothes. Mike, surprisingly calm, looked down at Todd. Kill him, something screamed into Mike's mind. "I'm sorry, Todd," Mike said. "I don't know where you got your information about Kelly, but she's not a whore. It's perfectly fine to pick on me. I've let you do so before, and I have no problem letting you do so in the future. But I hope you stay clear of my wife. I get angry when someone maligns her, and being angry and being a black belt is not a good combination. Is that understood, Todd?" Mike twisted Todd's hand for emphasis. Todd nodded, whimpering his assent. "Good. And Todd, you may control HR, but I taught Mr. Peters everything. That's why when he started his company, he offered me the lead programmer position. Being a nerd means I may only have nerd friends, but I find that this is actually pretty beneficial, since, as you can see, nerds own the world. I do hope you'll remember that." Mike released Todd's hand and backed away, leaving him sobbing on the floor, clutching his ruined hand. That felt good, Mike thought. That felt very good.